It is the year 301 of the Common Era, a market in the Roman East. By order of the Emperor Diocletian, a baker who sold a loaf of bread above the price, carved into the wall behind him, was executed before the day was over. The baker's name doesn't survive. The emperor's does. Diocletian was the first ruler in history to make selling bread above price a capital crime, and the first to write the script that every government with a price control problem has remixed since. Every government that has tried to fix inflation by capping prices has watched it fail. Argentina just lived it. Venezuela is still living it. America tried it under Nixon, but the first emperor to do it did it 1700 years ago. And by the time he died, his own edict was a dead letter. When governments cap what your money can pay, they don't fix what your money's worth. They just make sure you can't buy anything with it. Empty shelves, vanishing goods, savings that can't reach the things you need. That's what Diocletian's victims left us. Every time you hear a politician call for price controls, you're hearing the late-stage symptom of money that's already been debased. The cap is the alarm bell, not the fire. This is the story of how a serious emperor, a competent one, maybe the most competent of his century, ran into a wall that always wins. He was born Diocles, around the year 244, on the Dalmatian coast, what's now Croatia, near the modern city of Split. His father was a freedman or a former slave. We're not certain which. We're certain he had nothing to start with. What he had was the army. By the time he was 40, he commanded the elite cavalry of the imperial household. When the emperor Numerian died under suspicious circumstances, in 284, the troops acclaimed Diocles emperor. He took the regnal name Diocletian. He inherited an empire mid-collapse. The 100 years before his accession are called the crisis of the 3rd century. Roughly 50 men claimed the imperial title in 50 years. Civil wars almost continuously. Plague. The empire briefly split into 3. Diocletian stopped it. He reunified the empire. He built a system of 4 co-emperors, the tetrarchy, so the next succession wouldn't trigger another civil war. He restructured the army, the provinces, the tax system. By the year 300, the empire was, for the first time in a century, stable. That's the man who reached for the price cap. Not a tyrant, a reformer. The reason the story matters is that he wasn't reckless. He was the most disciplined emperor Rome had produced in living memory, and even he couldn't make this one work. To understand why he tried, you have to understand the money he inherited. Rome's coin was the silver denarius. Under the first emperor, Augustus, around the year 0, it was nearly pure silver, about 95%. By the year 64, the Emperor Nero quietly trimmed it, just a few percent, just to fund the rebuilding after the Great Fire of Rome. No one noticed. Once one emperor trimmed it, every emperor who came after found a reason: war, games, bribes for the Praetorian Guard. By the year 200, the denarius was under 60% silver. By 250, under 30. Then came the killer move. The Emperor Caracalla in 215 introduced a new coin called the Antoninianus. He ruled it was worth 2 denarii, but he only put 1.5 denarii worth of silver into it. A coin worth 2, made of 1.5. Mathematically guaranteed inflation, stamped onto every face. By the time Diocletian took the throne, the denarius was barely silver at all. 5%, maybe less. A copper disc washed with a whisper of silver. Prices had been climbing for generations. Wages couldn't keep up. Soldiers were the first to feel it. Roman armies in the 3rd century were paid in coin that wouldn't buy the food they ate. Some emperors paid them in kind: bread, oil, wine, instead of money. That's the country Diocletian inherited. Money that didn't work, paying soldiers who didn't trust it, in an empire whose prices wouldn't sit still. He tried to fix the money first. That's the part most people miss. In 294, he reformed the entire coinage. He pulled the Antoninianus out of circulation. He minted a new silver coin, the Argentius, at 95% purity, the same standard Augustus had used 3 centuries earlier. He minted a new gold coin too. He standardized weights across every imperial mint, from Britain to Egypt. It should have worked. On paper, it did. Roman silver was real silver again. But people had spent 200 years learning what an emperor's promise on a coin was worth. The new good coins disappeared from circulation almost as fast as they were minted. Hoarded. Buried. Used only between people who already trusted each other. The bad coins kept circulating. Prices kept climbing. Now in the new currency. Because that's what people had to spend. Diocletian had given the empire honest money. The empire wouldn't take it. So he reached for the next tool. If the merchants wouldn't honor the new coin's value, he would force them to. The edict on maximum prices was issued in late 301. We have it in fragments, pieces of inscribed stone scattered across what was once the eastern half of the empire, with a major find at Aphrodisias in 1970. What the fragments show is staggering. Roughly 1,400 entries. Maximum prices for grain, wine, oil, meat. Maximum wages for stonemasons, carpenters, scribes, school teachers, laundresses. Maximum freight rates for shipping by sea. The entire economy of the empire on tablets fixed. The penalty was death. Not just for the seller who charged above the cap, for the buyer who paid above the cap, for the merchant who pulled his goods off the shelf rather than sell at a loss. The first 2/3 of the edict are penalties. Death for selling high, death for buying high, death for hoarding. Diocletian was explicit about why. The preamble blames the unrestrained madness of speculators and profiteers, merchants gouging the people. The people, the edict says, will be saved from the merchants. Order will be restored. Then, it was posted in every forum in the Eastern Empire. We know what happened next from a contemporary witness. His name was Lactantius, a Christian writer, no friend of Diocletian, but the only person we have who saw it firsthand. His description has survived for 1,500 years. He wrote, "Much blood was shed for the various trifles. Men were afraid to expose anything to sale, and the scarcity became more excessive and grievous than ever, until the ordinance, after having proved destructive to multitudes, was from mere necessity abrogated." Translate that out of the church Latin, people died for nothing, over a sack of grain, a bolt of cloth, and the goods stopped showing up. Merchants pulled their stock off the market rather than sell at a loss. Stalls went empty. Markets shrank. Soldiers again had to be paid in kind, because the official money still couldn't buy what soldiers needed to eat. Black markets exploded. The cap was law in the forum, and a dead letter in the alley behind it. Officially, the empire's prices were stable. Actually, the empire's economy had retreated underground. Enforcement was patchy. Strongest where Diocletian directly ruled, the eastern provinces, and almost ignored in the west. Within 4 years, no one was prosecuting violations. By the year 305, when Diocletian abdicated, his great economic reform was effectively dead. We can't be certain whether he formally repealed it. We are certain no later emperor reissued it. In the year 305, Diocletian did something no Roman emperor had ever done before. He walked away from the throne. Voluntarily. He retired to a palace he'd built himself on the Dalmatian coast, back to the place where Diocles had been born 61 years before. When his fellow emperors begged him to come back and take the purple, he refused. According to legend, he pointed at his garden and said, "If you could see the cabbages I've planted with my own hands, you would never ask such a thing." He died in 311, 6 years after stepping down. A private man. He was the first emperor to fix the price of bread by force of law. He was also the first emperor in 3 centuries to walk away. Both of those things are him admitting something. The edict was the admission spoken loudly. The retirement was the admission spoken with his feet. The pattern Diocletian set has been replayed at scale in modern memory. 3 times you can name without thinking. In 1971, on August 15th, Richard Nixon went on national television and announced a 90-day freeze on all wages and prices in the United States. The first peacetime price controls in American history. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. By 1974, they were gone. They didn't bring inflation below 5%. They helped set up the stagflation that defined the rest of the decade. In Argentina, through the 2010s, successive Peronist governments under Cristina Kirchner imposed and reimposed price controls on staples. By 2023, annual inflation hit 211%. Shelves were thin. The black market dollar traded at twice the official price. In late 2023, Javier Milei was elected and began dismantling the controls. By 2025, monthly inflation hit a 5-year low. In Venezuela, the experiment is still running. 2 decades of price controls, currency controls, and rationing. Empty shelves, parallel currencies. A working class paid in dollars under the table, because their own money won't function. Each story is a different decade and a different continent. Each one runs the same script Diocletian wrote in 301. Debase the money over years. Watch prices rise, blame the merchants, cap the prices, watch the goods vanish. Pretend not to notice the black market. Eventually, let the cap die quietly. That's the warning Diocletian left. It isn't that price controls are stupid. They're not. They're the rational political move when a government has run out of other tools. The merchants are visible. The currency is invisible. Voters can see the man overcharging for grain. They can't see the mint that quietly cut the silver content of every coin for 200 years before he overcharged. That's why governments reach for the cap. Not because it works, because it lets them point at someone other than themselves. So when you hear a politician say the words price gouging or speculators, or we will hold profiteers accountable, listen for what came before. The price didn't move on its own. The money moved first. What hits your savings, your paycheck, your purchasing power, is the debasement that came first. The cap on the price tag is the moment the empire admits what it already did to the coin. Diocletian was the first to try and the first to fail. Everyone since has just been a footnote in his story. Every empire believes its money will last forever. Everyone has been wrong. The cap on the price tag is just the moment the empire admits it. Thank you for watching. If you like this documentary, it would mean the world to us if you like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you have any wishes for the next documentary topic, please leave a comment down below. We reply to all of them.